Hello everyone and welcome to another video in this channel. Today we're going to continue with this one. You guys seem to like that, so I'm happy to continue and show you the next step. So if you have already modeled this shield, make sure to go into our Discord and share your results, because today we're going to be looking at textures. Now I did cheat a little bit last time because I did this render right here and I added a substance material on the wood just to look nicer on the thumbnail, but now we're going to do it properly. So the first thing we need to understand is that for us to be able to convert this into an actual like a texture model, of course I need to, what the hell happened here? Interesting. So first of all, we need to fix any issues that we might have had. So this one is definitely one issue right here. It seems like I deleted this face. So I'm just gonna grab that face, I'm gonna go to poly modeling and we're gonna bridge it real quick. There we go. And I'm probably gonna have to do the same one with this thing right here. So let's isolate, grab that edge and a bridge. Perfect. That should fix it. We do have an N-gun right there, which is really weird. So I'm just gonna control and delete. Anytime you delete a vertex, you need to press control and delete to delete it properly. So one of the things that I did for the render to make it look a little bit nicer is that I push the like the woods, as you can see right here, I push them forward and backwards so that they create a little bit more depth. So in this case, I'm gonna bring them back. And actually, one thing I'm gonna do here is I'm just gonna say mesh and separate. Let's separate every single piece. So let's grab this guys right here and let's see what's going on. So let's go top view. Oh, okay, I see what happened here. So the bend modifier that we used definitely like changed things here a little bit. There we go. So I do want to have a little bit of variation, as you can see here on the shield planks. I think that allows for a more interesting look. I'm gonna center a pivot point on all of them, and let's just like slightly fix them, the curvature right here, because I do think the curvature is a little bit too intense. And there we go. Now what we can do is we can grab a couple of this guys, just push them up and down, or like just around a little bit. And again, this is going to give me a little bit of variation. We got to be very careful, of course, with the border, with the main border, because we don't want to push the wood planks like outside of that specific border. Even if these things are floating a little bit, that should be fine. Okay, so here are my 3 steps for good UVs, or 5 steps actually. I've done a video of this before, but we're going to go over them real quick. First, UV, delete UVs. We don't want to have any UVs. We're going to start fresh. Grab everything and I'm going to say UV, and we're going to do a camera-based projection, which is just going to take a picture of the whole thing. And now if we go to the UV editor, you're going to see that we have something to work with. And I'm going to go piece by piece. So for instance, this guy right here, what's the best way to do this piece right here is to go across this thing and then on these little corners right here. So I'm going to select all of the corners right there. And I'm going to say a UV and cut UV edges. That's one way to do it. And now if we go to the UV editor, and we select everything, we can press Control U, which is unfold. And as you can see, we're going to have the unfold right here and the unfold right here. So that piece is ready. Let's go over here. This guy right here, super easy. Why is it easy? Because it has one line down the middle. So that's a perfectly good place to do a cut. Actually, one thing that they recommend, and I'm going to show you right now, is to bevel this thing, make the fraction a little bit smaller, and then grab this whole thing, Control E. I'm going to push it in a little bit, just a tiny bit, to create a nice little like a groove right there. And that way, if we go to our edge loop, we can grab that inner edge right there. And that's going to be the actual edge loop. It's going to be hidden in that little like seam line, which is, again, a very good way to hide elements. Now, this, I don't want this to be like super long, so I am going to add one cut right here on the half of the section. And again, just to make things like unfold a little bit nicer, I'm going to add a couple of cuts across this element right there, and probably another one right here. This one needs a little bit more care, because as you can see, the edge flow does not flow perfectly. So we need to do this. And the reason why I'm doing this, why I'm adding some extra cuts along the length of the whole thing, is so that we don't have super big pieces on the UV. That's also gonna allow me to get a little bit more resolution on my UV map. So a rule of thumb is not to have as many cuts, but we also don't want to have too few or too like little cuts. So I'm gonna go here and I'm gonna say cut UV edges again. Let's go to the UV editor, and what I'm expecting to see here is like probably 8 or 12. So Control U, and there we go. Look at that. Control L, and this is the type of like distribution that we want. Yes, we're gonna have seam lines, but I'm gonna show you inside of Substance how to hide those seam lines so that you don't have them on your object. For the planks, let's grab all of the planks real quick. The planks are like relatively simple. However, they don't have like middle lines. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna combine them. And I am going to go to each individual plank, and I am going to add a middle line on all of them. And the reason why this middle line, again, is important, even though it's extra polygons, some people might be like, oh, we don't want to have extra polygons. We want to keep things as optimized as possible. For this particular exercise, it doesn't really matter. And we can use this edge lines right here, again, to cut the front and the back of the wood planks. Now, another thing that's going to be important here, let me go UV, cut UV edges. There we go. So if we go to UV editor, and we unfold everything, we should have this, and then Control L to lay them out. And if we turn on the little grid right here, we should be able to see the grid lines. If we press number 3, one of the things that I want to avoid is a little bit of that stretching. I'm not seeing too much stretching, so that's fine. But if we were seeing some stretching, one of the ways to solve this is by adding some cut lines on the borders right here. So some support edges down here are a good way to make sure that when we smooth this thing, we don't get as much stretch. Could even like add some like cuts right here. That's why when you see like breakdowns in movies and stuff like that, you're gonna see that they usually have like a really dense geometry to avoid this sort of stuff. But we're not gonna like Substance Painter does not work with like smooth mesh, so we're gonna keep it like this. Now this guys right here, the little spheres, those are fairly simple. So again, I'm gonna combine them all into a single one, and the UB is just gonna be a like the front and the back of the sphere. So we just select edges on both sides, of course. And we do UV, cut UV edges. There we go. We go to the UV editor. We grab all of the shells right here, Control U and Control L. And that's it. All of them laid out perfectly. Now for this thing right here, this is going to be a little bit more interesting. Let's go for the arrows first. Arrows are super easy. Again, we're going to combine. We're going to combine everything at the end, by the way. So we're going to combine, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to this tool called 3D Cut and Sew UV Edges, which should allow me, as you can see right there, to select the back like loop of the element and pretty much do the whole cut across the surface. So yes, there's going to be a little bit of distortion on the corners, but it's so thin that we're not really going to notice it. So if we just Control U right there, Control L, you can see everything looks very nice. And finally, this piece right here, which as you can see, it's empty on the back. So you just need to unfold. That's it. Control U, and there we go. It's perfectly unfold. So now every single part of my shield has been properly unfolded. One thing I'm going to do here, I'm going to delete history, face transformation. We're going to combine everything, like just make sure that it's a single object so that we don't have any issues inside of substance. And one of the things that we can do here is we can actually call this shield low, and we can do bakes. So I'm going to duplicate this one. This one's going to be called shield high, and this shield high, I'm going to say mesh. I'm going to smooth this once, 2 times. It's going to be very dense, but we're going to be doing a bake of the normal maps onto this guy so that we get like even cleaner effects. Or another option, to be honest, I think this is better. Let's not complicate things with bakes. I'm just going to grab this guy. I'm just going to say mesh and smooth. That way, yes, this is a little bit denser. As you can see, we got 66,000 triangles, but it's going to look very nice, very cinematic. So this is going to be my my mesh right here. So I'm going to go to UV. And first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give it another unfold because we smoothed the surface, so the UVs need to adapt a little bit. And then I'm just going to press Control L. And by default, if I go here to modify layout, this is the tool that I'm using here for my UVs to make sure that they like unfold nicely. I'm using vertical pre-rotation so that every single thing is vertical. For wood, that's going to be really helpful. And very important, shell pre-scaling, preserve 3D ratios. So the size of the islands should match the size that we have in our 3D view. Another thing I want to do here, here for the arrows, I'm also going to give them a little bit more rotation, even if I need to move them, because I do want to have them like as straight as possible. Because if we use any like metal texture that runs around or along the surface, it's important that it runs nicely. Now, one rule of thumb, as you guys know, is every single island should remain inside. So I'm going to just like change the scale there very slightly so that it fits perfectly there. And yeah, we're just going to position these guys inside of our thing and make sure they're all pointing up and down. Again, make sure that they're not touching any other island. That's another one of the rules that we use for UVs. And if you want to learn a little bit more about this whole process, you can check our newest course, or the first course that I released, which is the weapon creation for games. Yes, we do this in Blender, but all of the techniques that I'm showing you here, how to model texture and create UVs, they're the exact same thing. Like, I could have done that course with Maya, and like nothing would have really changed except for the sculpting thing, which we probably would have to do inside of ZBrush. But yeah, if you want to check it out, I'm not going to play the commercial right now, but make sure to check the description on the video, and the whole information is right there. Cool. So we got this thing ready. We're ready to go into UV. So I'm going to say File, Export Selection, and just to make things a little bit faster, I'm going to export to the desktop right now, and then I'm going to bring everything back into its folders. And yeah, let's open Substance Painter. So there we go, we're inside the Substance Painter. I'm just gonna go File, New, and this is not gonna be like a basic overview of Substance Painter. I'm just gonna show you some cool tips. We're gonna keep it simple, but we're gonna texture it very nicely. So let's go 2048, and let's go OpenGL, and just hit OK. And let's see how this looks. Perfect. Look at this. Beautiful, beautiful shield here inside of Substance Painter. Now, before you start doing anything, one thing that I'm noticing here is that we have two materials. This is wrong. We should not have two materials. So I'm going to go back here, and I'm going to assign a new material. It's going to be an Arnold AI Standard Surface, and I'm going to call this Shield. This is very important. If you want to have more resolution, you can have multiple materials and multiple UV sets and like texture them all at the same time. But that's going to make things a little bit more like heavy for us. So in this case, I don't think we need it. So File, New, and let's just open our shield again. And now we should only have one set. 2K is fine. There we go. So just one set called shield. So before we start texturing, we need to go to our baker right here, and we need to bake some mesh maps. Even though we don't have a high poly, we can still bake things such as ambient occlusion, curvature, position, thickness, and they're going to be very important to generate some nice effects. So I'm just going to set this to 2048, and let's give it a little bit of anti-aliasing, so 4x, and I'm going to say Blake selected. As you can see, we get some normal maps, and this is the important one, ambient occlusion, there you go, curvature, world position, and thickness, and perfect. So as you can see, that's going to give us some very, very nice effects. And now we can start blocking in our shapes. So how do we texture inside of Substance? The way I like to do it is I like to create the main materials, which in this case we got 2. And then I like to create variation in those materials. So let's start looking for some wood right here. As you can see, we do have stylized wood. There was a recent change here in Substance, and I actually don't like the new materials as much. They seem a little bit like fantasy sort of thing. So for instance, this wood rough is probably the one that's closer to what we want, and you can see it looks kind of fake, right? So I mean, we can play with this. We can like change the rotation to 90 degrees so that it goes along the veins of our element. I'm definitely going to increase the tiling to like a 2, and I'm going to go to the height information, so all the way to technical parameters, and I'm going to bring the height range down so that we don't have too much like a wood grain. But it looks a little bit fake, to be honest. It looks very generated, very CG generated. And I'm not sure why they took some of the old materials out. But if you guys have access to Substance 3D assets, you can actually download your own like materials. So I know not everyone's gonna have access to this one, but I am gonna look. I wanna have a nice asset for myself. So I'm gonna look for this. So for instance, if we go over here, I believe the last one that I downloaded was this like damaged wood or something. So like rotten wood fibers, where is it? Like this worn wood planks, like this aged walnut wood looks really good. For instance, that one actually looks very nice. I think I'm gonna go with this one. So when you, if you have access to this, guys, you can just like download them. If you don't have access to this ones, don't worry. You can also look for Substance 3D Share, and it's the community assets. And there are some really good ones here as well, and these guys are free, so you don't have to do it. So for instance, this wood walnut, this rotten wood actually looks very nice, this dirty wood, so you can get similar effects with some of these elements. They're not going to be as advanced as the ones from 3D assets, but they look nice. So I'm going to drop this one right here. I'm going to drop it into my library, import, and now if I drop this one right here, you can see it looks, or it should look a little bit better. I'm going to move this or rotate this around 90 degrees. And definitely need to increase the tiling. Actually, it doesn't look that good, to be honest. I got another one right here, this rotten wood. So let's bring this one in here. And there we go. So rotten wood. That looks a lot better. So this rotten wood, again, we're gonna rotate this 90 degrees. It's very important that the direction of the fibers go in the direction of your object. In title, I'm gonna give this a 2 title. There we go. So as you can see, we get this very, very cool effect. You can change things around with this offset. You can like move things around with the seed, for instance, to randomize the seed so that you don't get the exact same like effects on all of the planks. But yeah, this is giving us a nice effect. So I'm gonna Control G to group this. I'm gonna call this folder a wood. And inside of this one, I'm going to right click and add a black mask. I'm going to press number 4 to go into object selection mode. And I'm going to select with this one right here, the planks, so that only the planks have that material. Then for the metal, I'm going to look for metal. They also changed the metals, which I, again, don't love. But for instance, there's this metal galvanized, which is not bad. This metal brush is also not bad. So I'm going to use the metal brushed, I think. Control G. Add a black mask. Again, select all of the shapes right here. All of the things that are going to have the actual material. So all of these little like spheres. There we go. And in this case, I'm going to change some things here. I don't want this metal brush to be following the UVs because as you can see, the shapes of the UVs are going like everywhere. So I'm going to change the type of projection from UV projection to triplanar projection. And then I'm going to rotate this 90 degrees. So that the projection is completely straight to the whole thing. So as you can see now, the fibers of these things should be following like very, very straight pretty much everywhere. Now we can still change a couple of things. So for instance, here the hairline density and the brushing density, we can bring it up or bring it down. We're going to be adding rust and things like that to make this thing a little bit less intense. The color variation, for instance, we can reduce it so that it's not too much. But this already looks a little bit better than what we had inside of Maya. And the reason is this thing actually has a little bit of variation on the textures. So this one's going to be called metal. So if we take a look, let me open the, actually no, I was going to open the desktop, but now let's just go to source images. Source images. If we open the image, the reference image for the element, you're gonna see that the metal is very like bright. It's like a very like shiny metal, and then we got a paint on the wood itself. So let's figure out the paint first. I'm gonna go to this guy right here, and I'm gonna add a new layer. This is gonna be just like a very traditional layer right here. And as you can see, this quadrant right here and this quadrant right here are supposed to be white. So I'm gonna add a black mask, and I'm gonna paint with a hard brush. Let's go here to our brushes. Let's grab a basic hard. I'm gonna paint where I would expect these elements to be, which will be right there. And even if it's not perfect, that's fine. Sometimes having a little bit of like errors and like human things can make elements look a little bit more realistic. So there we go, something like that. And I don't expect to see it on the back, to be honest. So I'm going to try to erase it, but I don't know. What do you guys think? I think maybe, yeah, maybe this knight likes to see the colors on the back as well. So let's paint this again. Very careful here. Press X to switch from black to white. Another thing you can do is you can press Shift to make sure that you have a very straight line. That's another great way to paint things. And here, I'm just going to be very careful to sharpen that as much as possible. And then over here, again with Shift, let's go all the way down. Oh, let's fill this in. And again from here, let's go to the side. Right around there. And we can clean it up like that. Perfect. Now, here's where the magic happens. I'm going to add a generator. This is going to be a, let's add a dirt generator. And we're going to multiply this against the paint. And that's going to give me this sort of like damaged paint. I'm going to increase the contrast quite a bit. I'm going to remove this or invert this. And we can play a little bit with the sort of effect that we want. Actually, let's not use dirt. Let's use a metal etching instead. There we go. There we go. That's the kind of like scratchiness that I'm looking for. Cool, right? So we get a little bit of scratch in between the different like planks. Now what I'm gonna do here to make my life a little bit easier is I am gonna duplicate this guy right here, and then I'm gonna remove the metal edgeware, invert this mask. Work smart, not hard. Invert this mask. Okay. Well, do we have the proper mask? Let me just make sure. Let's change this color to red. this like nice dark red, something like that. And we should be able to invert this mask. Invert mask. There we go. We invert the mask, and as you can see, we get this very nice effect. Of course, we can paint out certain areas that we might see, or where we have this sort of like issue. Just make sure that we don't have any of those elements right there. Back here, I think I want to like paint a little bit more. There we go. And then we add another generator. Again, a metal edgework generator. And we're going to invert this and multiply. There we go. And we can play around with the effect as well to get this very, very nice like damaged effect. Now, I usually, as you guys know, I usually don't like having my colors just on top of elements. So I like to use like overlay to blend the color with the color of the wood. And we can play around again with like the metal edgewear, how much detail or how little detail we want. For instance, a little bit right there might not be a bad idea, but I definitely feel like this red color is a little bit too shiny. So I'm gonna make it a little bit like more matte. And the color, I'm gonna desaturate it and make it a little bit brighter. That white color, I am gonna keep it glossy. That way we also have a little bit of variation between both elements. Now, just to add a very simple little detail here, I'm gonna add a fill layer. I'm gonna grab the same color of the wood, and that is going to be really rough. I'm going to add a black mask, and in this black mask, I'm going to add a fill layer. I'm going to look for scratches. So we got this like grunge scratches, and as you can see, we get this very nice effect. And this one's one of the things I'm going to do is I'm actually going to push the color a little bit lighter so that we can see the light color of the wood underneath. We can even push the height information in. It's going to make the scratches a lot deeper. So we can go, of course, to the scratch layer right here and change the valence, which is the amount of scratches. We can change the scratch quantity. So I'm going to keep it low. I don't want to have too many. And this one I'm going to change to linear dodge so that it adds on top of the color and we can see them a little bit better. So as you can see, very, very simple layer that we can add and make the whole thing more interesting. Let's go to the metal. I don't love this metal. I feel like something changed in the Substance Painter thing, and they kind of like ruin certain elements. So I'm gonna go over here. I'm gonna look for old metal, and there should be something that looks a little bit better. Like this burnt metal looks really, really nice. This iron gun metal looks very cool as well. Even this metal grinded. I think this metal grinded is a little bit closer to what we're looking for. So let's grab that one. And I'm gonna drag this and drop it into my materials. Again, if you don't have access to this one, try to look for the substance share elements and you might find something similar. I'm gonna import this in and let's bring it into the folder. Much better. Way, way better. Look at that. Beautiful. Definitely gonna make this a little bit lighter. The concept's a little bit lighter, so I'm gonna like lighten this up. And as you can see, like just that material there is doing so much work. Like so much work for the whole thing. Let's add rust. So I'm going to go over here. I'm going to grab my metal rust. This one I actually do like better than the old rust. I don't know what it has, but it looks a little bit nicer. And this one I'm just going to add a black mask. I'm going to add a generator, and I'm going to add a dirt generator. And as you can see, this one I'm just going to change to overlay. Very important, so that the colors get a little bit darker in certain areas and we get a nicer effect. And we play around with the dirt level. We want, I do want a little bit more contrast, but less intensity. So let's play a little bit here. And super important. This is a technique that I show like a lot. It's one of my favorite techniques, to be honest, to add this sort of like detail to the whole thing. And it's breaking up the effect, because right now, let's make this very intense. As you can see, right now this effect is everywhere in every single part. It looks very grungy, it looks very bad, so very like unprofessional, because everyone has access to this like elements, right? So if you can do this, everyone else in the world can do it. So in order to add that like specific effect to your stuff, what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna add a fill layer, and we're gonna use a clouds texture. So this clouds texture, I'm going to use it to change the valence, change the contrast, maybe even change the tiling a little bit. And then what we can do is we can multiply this one against the other element. And as you can see, we reduced rust, and now it's not everywhere. It's only in certain parts. So it's a really good way, again, to break rust down a little bit. Another thing that's very important is to use a paint layer and manually go in there and paint certain things that you feel are going to be useful. So for instance, I like using this dirt brush, and we can add a little bit of this sort of like rust effect. Let's say right here. Now I do feel like this rust is adding too much height, so I'm going to remove the height information. so that we only have like color. Or if we want to have height information, we could also go to the height element and just like lower this quite a bit, because we don't want to have as much. There we go. So here again on the paint layer, I can start adding a little bit of rust in certain areas that are gonna make this element a lot more specific, right? Like I, as the artist, am deciding where I want to have this sort of like a rust effect. And usually rust is accumulated on the lower portions of the elements. We could use an stencil as well. It's perfectly fine. I actually created some. These are available on the resources on the Discord. So if you want to check them out, there are some like alphas that you can use. Let me show you. So I'm gonna add a fill layer here. In the fill layer, I got some. They're called Ave. So I got this like Ave rusted texture leaking, and that one, if we invert that or play with it, as you can see, we get this like interesting effect, and we can use like multiplies and things like that. Let me show you the process. So I'm gonna go over here. I'm gonna add another rust. I'm gonna add a black mask, a fill layer, and I'm gonna add that one right there. I got a couple. Which one looks better? Yeah, I think that one looks good. And then I'm gonna need to add a levels to invert that. And as you can see, I can play around with this. And if we go to the fill, we can change the tiling, so it looks like a really like a splattery effect of rust everywhere. And then what else can we do here? We could add, for instance, another generator. Let's add a a third generator is fine. We're gonna invert this and we're gonna multiply, and we can play with the effects here so that we only have a little bit of that rust in certain areas. So it's all about like combining elements, combining math to generate something a little bit more interesting. So for instance, here, I'm gonna remove a lot of this from the lower areas, and I'm just gonna keep this on the upper areas of the shield. Finally, I think a metal edgeware is gonna be good. So I'm gonna use this metal foil right here on top of the metal, or inside of this metal layer. I'm gonna get rid of the height. I don't want to have any information. Also of the normal. Just want to have like a clean element. Black mask, and we're gonna add the generator, and this is gonna be a metal edgeware generator. As you can see, that brightens up the corners. I'm gonna increase this a little bit more, but then I'm gonna use again the trick where I fill this with a clouds noise, or even with this guys right here. We can play with the tiling, play with the rotation, and then multiply this so that we remove, as you can see, a little bit of the effects from certain elements. So it's a very good way to add variation to the whole thing. This one I like to set to linear dodge and just make it a little bit less intense. Because again, I don't want my shield to be like super grungy. Especially when you're in the game, you don't want like noise every single time or at every single point. I might even go all the way down here to the paints. And for instance, on the white paint, I'm gonna add another like paint layer. And I can use this to bring back a little bit of the damage into the paint. Same for the red paint. Let's make a paint layer here, and we can bring back a little bit of that red paint so that it's a little bit like, you know, more intense. I also don't like a lot of the rust here, so let's go to the rust, and let's remove a little bit of the rust on the white layer, on the white paint. And again, this is how we build like interesting surfaces and effects for our whole element. Let me take a look at the concept right now, see if I'm missing anything. I don't think I am. I think this is looking quite nice. But I do think the metal is a little bit too shiny, so I'm going to go to the like metal here. I'm going to increase the roughness a little bit, just so it's a little bit less like shiny. There we go. And I kind of want to add like a gradient going on the whole thing. So here's another like cool trick. I'm going to add just like a dark mask right here. And then I'm going to add a black mask. I'm going to add the generator, and this is going to be a position generator. So as you can see, this position generator is going from top to bottom. I'm going to invert that, so it's going from bottom to top. We just want color. In this one, I just want color. And I'm going to, on the position, I'm going to play with the balance here. So we get a very interesting group right here. There we go. And then we can add another fill layer. Let's just use a grunge texture. Like this grunge concrete dusty, that's fine. And we're gonna multiply this. So now as you can see, we're adding this like little dirt that's coming from the bottom, and we're playing with the Sorry about that. If you heard the scream, it was my wife that found a mouse on the garden, so we had to get rid of it. Don't worry, it's fine. It was just set him loose on the mountain. So yeah, there we go. Now I'm sure people are gonna be asking, like, how could we do things like blood or something like that? Well, of course you need to add more layers to this. So for instance, we could add another layer and make this like a dark red layer. Add a black mask, and there's even some brushes here, I believe, like splat brushes, like this ink splatter or this like ink splatter big, and you can just like start painting where you want your blood to be. But I don't want to make this like element as like heavy as what you might see sometimes in the game. So let's just export this. I'm just gonna say file. Let's of course save this. I'm gonna save it on this desktop for now. And this is a question that we get asked frequently. I actually did a video not so long ago, might be linked like right over here, where I talk about how to connect textures, but I'm going to show you an even faster way. So I'm going to export the textures right now, and we're going to export this in the desktop again. Just say select folder. I'm going to export in PNG is fine, and here I'm going to change something important. I'm going to change this to Arnold AI Standard, which is this one right here. I'm going to say export. As you can see, we're going to get base color, emissive, height, metalness, normal, roughness, all of the maps that we normally need. And if we go to Maya here, I can actually go to the Substance plugin and use the Substance plugin to apply workflow to image maps. We can select multiple maps, and as you can see, we can select all of this, guys, including the height map, which in this case, I actually don't want the height map, so let me cancel. There we go. Select multiple maps. Gonna select everything except for the height map, and it will automatically connect everything where it should be and how it should be. We just hit apply, and to this guy we apply or assign the new material, which should be this one, AI Standard Surface 4. And now, if we save this real quick, we go to our ShotCam's camera, look through selected, and we do a render. Maya will convert all of their textures, and we should have our final result right here in just a second. So drum roll, and did it work? There we go. Look at that. Beautiful. So yeah, that's it, my friends. Hopefully you liked this video. If you did, please check or let us know in the comments down here, and make sure to like and subscribe if you're not subscribed. And if you want to support the channel, we're a very new channel. I've recently started this, so if you want to support us, the best way to do it is of course following us in all of our socials, and if you want, you can check our full course available right here in the description through Udemy. So thank you very much, my friends. Hopefully you liked this video, and let me know what else you want to learn. I'll see you back on the next one. Bye bye.